All right, everyone. Thanks for being with us and for being prompt. Everybody got in pretty quickly. I'm pleased to see that. I always get a little worried on our first session, making sure everybody has the link and they know where to go. So thanks for being with us today. This is our ninth series of the Nonprofit Management Institute. We've been offering this since 2020 of fall. So we've just been plugging along, and it's a pleasure and a delight to have all of you with us. We're looking forward to a great series. We hope that you'll be with us for the long haul. And we love to see faces, so thanks for having your video on when you can. Go ahead and, if you will, please go ahead and update your Zoom name with your first and last name. We do keep track of attendance. If possible, you could also add your organization. That would be great. And also, this is an important part, your language preference. You can either type in after your name ENG or SP for Spanish. We'll have our interpreters here with us from Sensole give a little introduction about interpretation throughout this series. Which is great that we're able to offer that. So here's a couple notes about Zoom. At this point, most folks are pretty well versed with virtual learning, and we will try to keep this session very interactive. Even though we're not in person, we try to make it as interactive as possible. We will note that, all lines are pretty much muted upon entry, but you can use your hand, you can use your raise hand to be recognized. You can always put questions in the chat, comments in the chat. We love to see people sharing things in the chat. People ask questions and other folks have ideas or resources. It's a great place to do that. And wanted to just let you know too that we are recording the session. We do put them up on our YouTube account that we share out in a wraparound email along with the slides. It's a great way for you to catch up, maybe something you missed or something you want to refer back to. We like to provide that. We typically send that out within 24 hours after each session ends. And we will have both a Spanish and an English recording. I'm confirming, Leslie, that you're recording as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our interpreters. We have two of them with us today, and they'll do a very quick overview of the interpretation available for this series.
Hello, everyone. This is Ingrid, and I'm here with my co-interpreter, Eva. We're from Sensontle Language Justice based in Asheville, and we're going to be providing interpretation between Spanish and English today. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Ingrid, estoy aquí con mi co-intérprete Eva y somos de Sensontle, Cooperativo por la Justicia del Lenguaje, basada en Asheville, en Carolina del Norte, y hoy vamos a estar proveyendo interpretación. Everyone who is not bilingual in Spanish and English will select an interpretation channel. To do that, to hear interpretation from Spanish into English, please click on the globe on the bottom right, then click on English to hear the interpretation. If you're joining via your phone, you can click on the three dots, language interpretation, English, and done. Todas las personas que no sean bilingües en inglés y español van a seleccionar un canal y para hacer eso, para escuchar la interpretación del inglés al español, hagan clic en el globo que aparece a mano derecha, luego hagan clic en español para escuchar la interpretación y si están llamando por su celular, pueden hacer clic en los 3 puntos, interpretación de idiomas, español y finalizado. Just some reminders to create this space of understanding amongst all. Please speak at a moderate pace and take a breath when there's a switch in speakers, one person at a time, and speak up loud and clear. Algunos recordatorios para que nos podamos entender todos en este espacio. Por favor, respirar después de terminar una frase, hablar en voz alta, fuerte y claro, y a un ritmo más moderado. If you have any issues with the interpretation, please let us know in the chat, but you can go ahead and join your channel now. Si tienen algún problema con la interpretación, nos pueden hacer saber, pero ya se pueden unir a su canal de interpretación. Thank you. Have a great meeting. Gracias. Buena reunión.
Thank you, Ingrid. Gracias. All right, we're going to go ahead and transition over to do a quick intro and welcome from our president and CEO, Ivan Canada.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Canada, pronouns he, him, and I am serving as the new president and CEO of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. I'm about 6 months in. Many of you may be new executives yourself and new leaders in organizations. And so trust me, I know what you are going through at this moment. And you have made the right decision to spend some time with the center and Dr. Palmer and Lisa and Rebecca and Leslie on the center team over the next 6 weeks in this program. I've been a long time sector worker, almost 20 years. And one of the things that I think is a blessing and a joy that you all are doing is creating some time for yourselves to grow. And so my challenge to you would be for you to take advantage of this opportunity. Like most things, you get out of it what you put into it. And so if you have the ability to like step into another room or go to another space or something where the distractions may not be there, I encourage you to be able to do that because you've got a wealth of knowledge and talent that are on the center team, but also with each of you all as participants. I just went through this program in the spring when I started, and so you're going to have the opportunity to be in small groups and get a chance to meet other leaders. And so I just say take advantage of the opportunities. And as always, we just are grateful for you all doing the important work you do around the state on some really big social and community issues. And so we want to do whatever we can at the center to help make your leadership journeys and your time in the sector better so that you can do the important work you do. So thank you for all you do. And if we can do anything for you, please just let us know.
Great. Thank you, Ivan. Appreciate that. So I'd like to take a few minutes just to introduce our partners or recognize our partners and sponsors, the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, Truist, and the Cumberland Community Foundation, who have made possible sponsored seats for this institute. And we're grateful and thank you and welcome. So who is this lady speaking? My name is Lisa Reed. I'm part of the center team here at the center. I'm the Chief Learning Officer. You've heard from Rebecca earlier on. She's our education manager. Wave, Rebecca, in case people didn't see you. And then we have Leslie, who stays off camera, but she's behind scenes making things happen for us, and grateful for her to do that. I want to give a brief overview of the center, if I may, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the services at the center. Like Rebecca said, let me just go back for a minute. This is our 9th and, can I say, our largest group that we've had for our nonprofit institute that we've had. And we're grateful and thankful for that. I think we had 61 people on the call. So it's going to be great to try to meet and see all of you as much as we can. The North Carolina Center for Nonprofits mission is to educate, connect, and advocate for North Carolina nonprofits over all 100 counties. So whether you're new, as Ivan mentioned earlier, or if you're a seasoned nonprofit leader, we believe the center has valuable information for all of you and resources for you. Hopefully, you all have received your workbooks for this series. If you've not received it, please let us know by putting it in the chat. And I believe everyone was emailed all the resources with attachments that you need for today's session. But again, if you did not receive this nice big spiral notebook, put it in the chat and let us know. So again, I want to thank you for coming. And if you are interested, and Leslie can put really quick the link in the chat about becoming a member to the Nonprofit Center, please take a hop over and visit our new and improved, much I say, website that has a lot of good, valuable resources and information for you as well. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to Rebecca just to quickly go over some housekeeping.
Thank you, Lisa. We've gone a little bit over earlier about our Zoom platform and everything. If you all, there is a link here. If you have any trouble with the Zoom today, I would highly recommend that you update, make sure you have the latest version. And there are instructions through this how-to guide to make sure that you have the latest version of Zoom and the most up-to-date version. We do want to encourage and everyone to go ahead and update your name if you hadn't. You don't need to do it in the chat. It's more important that we have it on your Zoom name. And pretty much how you can do that is by going down, click on the little 3 dots that's by your photo. You can see to rename is what you need to do there. And then just be sure to put your language preference there as well when you get a chance. We're also going to be trying something a little bit new. We're going to be trying to do breakout rooms by role. So when you're invited to join a breakout room, you'll see different roles there identified, and we'd ask that you go ahead and join us on that. We'll be figuring that out as we go because it's something that we haven't done before, but we're excited to try it out. I also want to mention too that by being on the Zoom call, you consent to obviously your picture and your video because that's how we are able to record these sessions. So you should have had a little pop-up that notified you that we were recording. I'm going to go ahead and just put this how-to here in the chat from Zoom. If you should have any questions, you can refer to that. And let's move to the next slide here. One of the things that we want to encourage here is sort of safe spaces was something that people heard a lot about, people that could bring their whole selves to a space. We're trying to move more to brave spaces here in this in our sector and hopefully everywhere else. And so how we do that is we really just encourage everyone to participate. We respect the humanity of others and their perspectives. We seek first to understand, not to be understood. And we all agree to take responsibility to demonstrate collective commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And where you see that come up here, we have on our next slide, we've shared our equity statement for those of you that have equity statements. It's a great way to show your support and to stand firmly in making spaces that that are for all. So we do weave ADI throughout all of these topics that we cover in this series, and it's sort of we're just trying to infiltrate it into everything that we do and kind of work that muscle so that it becomes something that we can just do pretty quickly. We do also acknowledge that there is sort of a recent trend or push for targeting EDI and DEI efforts, unfortunately. And I know some nonprofits have experienced having to really firmly stake where they stand on things, and unfortunately being not getting funding or having funding being pulled out. And so we do want to acknowledge that, and we'll be providing resources throughout that can help you in terms of protecting your organization and trying to find support around those issues. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll get into the agenda. We're here 15 minutes in, so we're good on timing. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you, Lisa,
Sure.
to go over our agenda.
Sure, great. Let's get going. Thank you for those couple of you who have put into the chat about the workbook. Keep it coming. I think one person, I think it's Malik, if you can put your email address would be helpful. I'm sure we have it, but just to make sure we have it correct, so we can make sure we follow up with you. So with that, let's get going. Yes, thank you, Rebecca, again. Here's our brief agenda for today. Well, let me just say it looks brief, but it's full of jam-packed information. We're going to go through a brief introduction. Then we'll go into our capacity building framework. We'll explain the principles, the management conditions, and capacity assessment you'll take, which is a short assessment of our 12. You'll take 6 of the 12 assessment for your capacity for your organizations. And we'll also explain practices in terms of what goes along with those principles. We'll have an evaluation at the end, and I please have to stress, please make sure you take time to do the evaluation as we go out through each session. It helps us to improve this institute and to give you better resources and information. So with that, let's start class. And I'm going to introduce our facilitator for the next 6 weeks. It will be a family by then. And we're starting off, we're just getting to know each other now. By the end, we'll be real tight. We'll have Dr. Palmer. We're going to place her bio in the chat for you to read. Please do so, so you can get to know her a little better. And with that, I'm going to hand it over for you, Rebecca, I'm sorry, to do some introductions as it's noted on our agenda.
All right. So we have our map up here. We love to see where folks are joining us from. It's a great way to just sort of see visually where you all are zooming in from. So we're going to ask you all to go ahead and find your annotate function. Essentially, if you go up to the top of your Zoom screen, and you may be able to find it in more, but let's go up to the top. You'll see view options when you hover up towards the top of your Zoom screen. And if you scroll down to annotate, it's the third, it should be around the third one down, I believe. And then you'll see a little toolbar that pops up. And you can use a stamp as probably preference. So you could do a star or heart. I hope you don't do a question mark. That might be if you're not sure if you're really there or not. But maybe you are. You're not really sure where you are in the state right now. But go ahead and use the annotate. I see them popping up now. Annotate stamp to go ahead and pop on there where you're zooming from. And we'll start to see this populate here on our map. Ooh, we got a lot from Cumberland. I know Cumberland helped folks get a seat in this session, in this series. That's great to see. Wonderful. We got some out there in Western North Carolina. All right. Are y'all able to find that annotate? If not, if it's not working, you can always put in the chat where you're joining us from as a backup. If you, one more time, because we may use this again throughout the series, when you hover, at least when I hover above on the top bar of my Zoom meeting, I see this little pop-up that says view options with a little arrow. And when you click on that, you can then find annotate. You'll click on that and you'll see your little toolbar will pop up for annotate. And the stamp is probably the fourth one down. It looks like a little check mark. You click on that, and then that's where you'll see your stamp options. I'll go ahead and do mine. I have a star. I'm going to use a star here, and I'm here in Wake County. There we go. Precious in Orange County. Oh, here we go, Kelly. I had to click on 3 dots in the circle next to Leslie Morales' name at the top of my meeting to find annotate. Thank you, Kelly. If others of you are having a little hard time. I know it can be hard to get your bearings. Nice. This is
And
great.
it looks
Thank you
like,
so
Rebecca, we've got folks kind of in the center of the state for the
Yeah.
most part. I was looking to see if there are any eastern towards, I guess it would be Virginia, wouldn't that be?
Mhm.
In those counties.
Oh,
Okay.
and Daryl
There's
says for me,
more.
bottom left of the screen, when I hovered, there was a pencil I had to click on. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, if
Good.
any of you are having any trouble with annotate, it may be time to just to update your Zoom and make sure you have the latest version. But thank you for
Mhm.
participating. Thanks for bearing with us as we're learning all these fun tools for interactivity. It really helps to enrich the series. So thank you for doing that. This is great. All right, we'll go ahead and clear our annotation. I'll let you do that, Leslie, because I'm not, if you can. All right, and while we figure that out, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you, Dr. Palmer.
All right.
Folks.
Good morning, everyone. And again, we do want to try to get to know all of you, and you get to know each other over the next 5 weeks, because after today, week 1 will be completed, right? So we'll have 5 more to go. We want to kind of continue a little bit with the introductions, and if you could kind of add a couple things in the chat for us. So one of the things that we're curious about is how many years have you worked in the nonprofit sector? So could you pop that number in the chat for us? And let's just see. All right, so I see 12, 20, 18, and I think I saw some. This is my first year, 25 years. 1 year, 40
Boy,
years.
40,
I just
yeah.
saw 40, yeah. Um, um, I've been in this sector doing work for right at 30 years myself. So, um, for some of us, it's been quite a while. And if you're like me, I didn't know that I was going to end up having a career in the nonprofit sector, but it happened. And so some of us found ourselves here, and then others may have actually planned it, that this was going to be the route that they would take in terms of their career. But we're all here for a lot of different reasons in terms of why we work in this sector. Another kind of question I want you to pop in the chat for me is, why did you decide to sign up for the Institute? And team, if we could go back to the gallery view, that would be great. Why did you decide to sign up for the Institute? And if you could put that in the chat as well, that would be great. We want to kind of get a sense of that. Again, good morning, good morning, good morning. We are in kickoff mode of the very first session of the series, which is our orientation. Let's see, we've got some responses in the chat. I see it was recommended. I see a person who says they're the new chairperson team. So we've got, looks like individuals that are a part of boards. I want to grow, learn more about nonprofits. This was recommended. Want to build internal capacity. And I think that was the person who had 40 years in the sector as well. This was recommended. Great, great, great. And as Rebecca mentioned, when we go into our breakouts, we have those arranged and set up such that we would like for you to sign up by the role that you have with your organization. So if you're an executive director, or you're maybe a coordinator or director or part of the management team, or you provide direct service, or you're a board member, or maybe even a founder, we've got those breakout rooms organized in a way where you can align with folks and be in a space with folks who have similar roles. So whenever we go into breakouts, kind of pay attention to that. The team will walk us through how to do that once we get to that point, but definitely keep that in mind as we go forward.
Dr. Palmer, I want you to give a quick shout out to, is it Corenda, her comment? I feel for her right now. She says, suddenly found myself as an ED with no experience, making do for a few years, but it's time to improve my strategies and support the organization. Can we all give her some, like, you go, girl, you got this.
Absolutely. I see Ashley's doing way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Hang in there. Use this group for resources, please.
Absolutely. And get to know each other as best you can. Everyone's name is in their window, and where they, the organization they represent, and so on and so forth. And so we do lean on each other as a team. We lean on you as well. We all have something to add to this experience. And so not one of us has all the answers. So that's important to note as we kind of get started and get going as it relates to our work. Another thing I do want to just highlight in terms of the design of the Institute. The Institute is designed in a way in terms of the really kind of highlighting 12 management functions. We're going to study and we're going to be trained related to 6 of the 12. And so in your material, you would have received information about the principles and practices of the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. And we all, as a team, this information was developed a couple of decades ago. And as a team, we worked together to kind of enhance, make edits to this information. This information is also in your workbook. So if you have a hard copy, it's going to be in your workbook. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But I do want to just highlight, just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page in terms of what we are anticipating in terms of the experience. We try to facilitate this experience such that it is participatory, hands-on, and more of a building on each of the management functions that we're going to cover. And so kind of be mindful that as we're building on each of the functions in our learning and our training and engaging in some of these practices, it's a building process. And so try to, as much as you can, to stay focused and stay present. We know this is 3 hours and it is it's virtual, so it lends itself to a little bit of convenience. But there are parts of the experience where if you miss a part, in that 3 hours, you might get off a little bit. And so we just kind of keep going. So make sure that, if you have to step away or, there's something else that you've got to pay attention to, we definitely understand that, but do understand that we are building on the information and the training that we're sharing. The experience, of course, aligns with, as I mentioned before, the principles that we have identified as being areas of work or management functions that we should learn and know more about in this experience. And so that's how we're highlighting that. Team, if we could go to the slide 12 for me, please, if you could share the screen. Great. So just to kind of continue with explaining our capacity building framework for nonprofit management, we do have a principles and practices guide. And in that guide, there are 12 principles. Those 12 principles, we typically work within those 12 principles based on understanding where a nonprofit is in terms of its current management condition. And we look at that from the perspective of, are we at a building kind of level or state of management? Are we at a thrive kind of level of management or sustain? And we try to kind of begin there so that whatever practices or whatever strategies that we decide that we're going to engage in, whether it be to enhance our capacity or whether it be to enhance our operations by way of enhancing our capacity, we typically want to start with, well, where are we currently? And then how do we move from that? And so we're going to spend some time assessing our nonprofit organization across those 12 principles with an emphasis on 6 of those. And so there is our capacity assessment. And then with the practices across the 12 principles, there are 216 practices. And we're going to study, as I mentioned before, 6 of those principles. And so this is our framework. This is kind of our springboard. This is what we kind of where we began our work and thinking about the Institute and how it's designed and what we offer throughout. Please, Lisa mentioned that we have an evaluation at the end of each of our each week. And so please provide for us any feedback. We try to make adjustments in the delivery of the Institute and the design of the Institute as much as we can. And so we really do pay attention to those evaluations. And so when you get that, please go ahead and complete it at the end of our work today. You can go ahead to the next slide. So in terms of our document, when you open the Principles and Practices Guide, and by the way, we'll put a link to this in the chat, but we can, this is made available to you. And the way that it's structured is you have each of the principles. The link is in the chat now. If you don't have your workbook, I think, team, I saw where there were some folks that didn't have their workbook. So you have this, you'll have it in two different there's two different layouts. One is in your workbook, that is page 14. Wow, a lot of pages. 14 through, get to the end, 14 through 29. So in your workbook, you have each principle, you have the overarching practice, and then there are practices that we have aligned with each of the management conditions. So build, thrive, sustain. And that is, that's there for you in your workbook. And again, you can also use the link to get to that information. This is a full color print version. It is available to purchase. And so, Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit more about that if they want to get this in a hard copy?
Sure. Yeah, so like Lisa said, like Dr. Palmer said, if you go to that link and you're a member, it's a free download that you can get the resource. But we have provided it as an attachment in the pre-session email that we sent out, but it's also in those pages of the exact content verbatim that's in Principles and Practices is in your workbook on those initial pages in the orientation session. So you have a couple places you can access it. If you are interested in any hard copies, of course, you can reach out to us, and we have member pricing for that as well. So just feel free to let me know. And my email will be in the wraparound email from today that we send out.
Great. Has everybody been able to find or able to see, either by way of the link or in your notebook?
The email pre-session material comes through it comes from our Salesforce. So it comes from whoever sends it on our staff. And what I can do is, Leslie, if we could go ahead and just put in the chat, the download link for the workbook for today. I believe the one Kate who requested the Spanish version, I sent that off to you, both digital and print copy. But if we could put the English version in the chat, then that way, if anybody can't find it or you're getting frazzled, since we're throwing a lot at you today, you can feel free to download from there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we could go to the gallery, that would be great. Just want to get a read. Does everybody have their workbook and or in terms of being able to access the guide? I see a thumbs up. Just want to make sure everyone has access to that because that's what we're going to use for the rest of our time together. I see quite a few thumbs up and it looks like people have what it is that they need. Okay. How are we feeling? That was a lot. That was a lot in about 10 minutes, right? A whole lot kind of coming out at one time. Well, we're going to do a deep dive into these principles, and we're also going to do a deep dive into our the framework and really operationalizing that framework. So we're going to transition now to kind of an introduction of the 12 principles. And the way that we want to do this is we want to ask the group a question around the top 3 most important functions that we should be, in which we should work in leading and managing a nonprofit organization. And so what would you say is the top 3 most important, functions in which nonprofits lead and manage? So give that some thought because I want you to record that somewhere here in a minute. But think about that. And if you just have a piece of paper that you can just kind of jot that down, that you can come back to that. So what would be, from your perspective, as we kind of move in of a nonprofit, what would you consider, or what would you say are the top 3 most important functions? Top 3 most important functions. And just jot that down. And once you've done that, just give me a thumbs up or give me some type of a reaction in your window. We do have, looks like about 60 participants. 5 of those is the team that are here. But we have right at 60 participants. And so you're going to hear me ask you to use your React feature quite a bit, because I want to make sure that we're all together. All right, so folks are capturing the top 3. What would you say are the top 3 most important functions in which nonprofits should lead and manage? Top 3. Okay. Pretty good, good. I think everybody's kind of got that kind of measured out. So once you have the top 3, go ahead and add 9 more. Go to page 8 in your workbook. Go to page 8 in your workbook. So you did the top 3 for me, what you thought were the top 3. Go ahead to page 8 and finish out that list. So in your workbook, you have a 12 principles worksheet. Gonna give you a little bit of time to fill that in. give me another react once you have filled in your 12. I asked for the top 3, and then I asked you to complete that list. Thank you, Dr. Hodges. I see your thumbs up in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah Bailey. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think we're all getting there. Thank you, Ashley Wagner. Awesome. Thank you, Greater Life of Fayetteville. Thank you. Great, great. Thank you, Carrie. First NC. Thank you, Catherine. I think it's Catherine Glass. That one kind of went a little quick there, but thank you. I think we are there. If we are not, let me know. You should be on page 8 of your workbook. And top 3 areas that from your perspective, that we need that's important as we begin to think about managing a nonprofit. And I do want to kind of add to our work in this series is primarily focuses on management as opposed to leadership conceptually. And so we are really looking at kind of the hard skills, so to speak, as it relates to managing a nonprofit, and in particular, practices that we've identified that are very, very helpful, that if we utilize and work in that, utilizing those practices, that we will see some enhancements in the way in which our nonprofit is managed. So right now you should have a list of 12 kind of areas of work that from your perspective should be some areas of management that we should work as it relates to the important functions of managing a nonprofit. And Rebecca, I'm going to pass it over to you for the recording of those 3 most important functions that people have identified.
Great. I'm going to put a little chat in, or a little link in the chat here for you all to go to it. If you've used Mentimeter before, you may be familiar with it, but it's basically a way for us to do a word cloud. And I'm going to share my screen with you all so we can see answers populated. And what it's asking you to do, you'll go to that link and you will go ahead and respond with your 3 top management functions in which nonprofits lead and manage. And let's see if I can do this. Okay, they're starting to pop up. So I'm going to share my screen and we can see them populate. Go. Share my screen. There it is. Share. All right. Hopefully y'all can see this. This out of the way. Here we go. So we're starting to see some responses collect here. They're in different colors. But really what we're looking for is the actual size of the word. The bigger the phrase or word, that means the more people have responded with that response. So our top 3 currently are financial management, fundraising, and I believe advocacy. Sometimes it can be hard to tell which ones are bigger than the other, but we'll see some top ones rise to the surface here. It's kind of fun to watch.
Financial management isn't shifting at all. It's remaining pretty significant area.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we've got 37 people have participated. We'll give it a few more seconds for folks to put their top 3 in there.
Is anyone having any problems using the Mentimeter? Is everybody good? Okay, good. Legal compliance is showing up. So it looks like financial management and fundraising
Mhm.
and advocacy. And it looks like board governance and legal compliance are tied. And strategic planning might be next, then communication. That's what it looks like to me. Okay.
And Thomas, I don't think there's a way to edit your response once you've hit send. So
Mm.
just feel free to populate them here in the chat if you'd like to.
Uh-huh.
And then same goes for Greater Life. If you all would like to just put your responses in the chat, that's always our great backup.
So our number one here is financial management. Number two is fundraising. Number three is advocacy, board governance, and legal compliance. Looks like maybe even strategic planning now looks tied
Yeah.
as number
Mhm.
4.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like communication may be number 5. So that's kind of it's a total of 7, but we're putting board governance, legal compliance, and strategic planning as that in that number 4 slot. And then communication is number 5. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing. How many folks ended up submitting something, Becca? Can you tell?
46.
Okay, good. Well over half of us. So thank you all for chiming in with that. So in your workbook, if you go to page 9 in your workbook, we want to spend some time just comparing your 12 with our 12. And so when you look at the 12 that you listed, the first thing I want you to identify is, did you have those 7 that we just saw in the cloud, in the word cloud? Did you have those 7 on your list? So there's that. And then how does your list of 12 align with our list of 12? So if you're looking at page 9 of your workbook, our first principle is advocacy and civic engagement. Our second principle is board governance. Our third is equity, diversity, and inclusion. Our fourth is financial management. Our fifth is fundraising. Number 6 is human resources. Number 7 is information and technology. Number 8 is legal compliance and transparency. Number 10 is program design, management, and evaluation. Principle number 11 is strategic communication. And principle number 12 is strategic planning. Now, this is not there are definitely more areas that could be added, but at present, in terms of our framing of the management functions that we focused on, they align with these principles. I did see something in the chat where someone said they added mission and vision to their list. One of the aspects of strategic planning is to revisit your mission and vision. And oftentimes this is a good opportunity to make any adjustments to that when you go through your strategic planning process. So there's a place for that in terms of alignment with the principles. I didn't see anything else in the chat team that in terms of any feedback there. And so again, we have 12 principles. We have 216 practices across those 12. We're going to focus on 6 of the principles in our work in the series. And so as it relates to managing nonprofit organizations, these areas come up very, very often. If you notice, even with our word cloud, you could see program design, you could see some like personnel. I saw EDI or DEI in the word cloud. So these things are on all of our minds, and this is a good way for us to check in as it relates to kind of what it is that's on your mind and the work that you're doing and how you are viewing these management functions in terms of what's important. The good news is in our series, we are going to focus on financial management. We have a session on that. We have a session on fundraising. We have a session on board governance. We have a session on strategic planning. And so as you look at the top 5 that came up in your list, those are areas that we are definitely going to do some work. Before we go into our first break for today, are there any initial just kind of reactions or just kind of comments you'd like to make regarding just this, kind of foundational introduction of what our 12 principles are and the exercise that we just did in terms of what's important? Any comments? You can raise your hand and you can unmute, or you can put your comment in the chat. Any just initial reaction to what it is that we've covered so far with this?
Yes, Dr. Palmer, this is Calvin in Winston-Salem. Good to see everybody and grateful for all of the information shared up to this point. I'm just curious, how did the center decide on the 12 principles, 6 of which we will be covering? How did you all go through the brainstorming and filtering process to arrive at the 12 that have been designated?
Does anybody on the team want to respond to that initially? I can respond too, but does anybody want to?
I think we'll say the same thing, Dr. Palmer, but go ahead.
Okay.
You were
Okay.
a
All right.
big part of
So-
this even from before the
Yeah,
center was
right.
involved. So I think it's important for you to
Yeah.
give a quick history overview.
Mhm. So it was a combination of things. It was very eclectic in terms of how we arrived at these 12. These 12 have framed our work, my gosh, I'm gonna say at least 2 decades, if not a little longer. But it's based on the inquiries that we get. So one of the opportunities that the center offers is that if there's a need that you have, and especially if you're a member, you can inquire with us for help or assistance or guidance. And so keeping a record of where those asks, the areas of management in which people were asking for help, helped us to determine what these would be. Also, in terms of asking our membership in a survey, what their needs are over the years. And so it was just a combination of that, a little bit more formal in the survey, a little bit, I guess, less formal in terms of what comes through our platform in terms of asking for assistance and help. Let's see. There's a comment in the chat. I think I saw, is it 1 or 2? Let's see.
Yeah, Lisa said she thought it was a simple question at first, what are your most kind of important principles? But upon consideration, it's a little bit more difficult than you expect to kind of say, no, these 3 are the top 3, right? Because they're always changing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we know that our needs change and our focus changes as it relates to what we're trying to shore up in our organization based on a lot of moving parts. For example, if we have a significant change in our board of directors, if we have a significant change in the executive director, if there's a significant change in staffing, all of those things contribute to where there might be gaps in terms of what we focus on. For some of us, what we place today is 3 of the most important, so to speak. could change by the time we get back to our work this afternoon. You know, just because things just change just that quick. Is there anything else in there that anybody else had a comment? I don't see. Oh, Shelley Hudson, I see your hand.
I want to say, as a new ED, I've been doing it for a year. I found it interesting, the ones that were highlighted, that it seemed like it didn't matter how long you've been working in the nonprofit field, those still rose up to the top right now.
Mm.
So
Thank you, Shelley, for that comment. It reminds me of whenever we facilitate the strategic planning process and a nonprofit is trying to identify what to work on, let's say for the next 3 years, or where the focus needs to be. Fundraising typically comes to the top. It's typically in that top area as well.
Yes, I have another question. In relationship to the principles that you outlined, was that in some respects driven by the number of inquiries or questions that you had that were posted by member organizations?
Yes, it was that, and it was also surveys that go out to our members, where we try to keep in touch with what members need. Yes, and then
Okay, thank you.
also in a combination, Keith, of that, and we have a platform where organizations can inquire with us and ask for assistance or direction or support, and it comes from that. We're informed by that as well.
Okay, I have one other follow-up question, if you don't mind. Since based on my initial understanding is you're only going to cover the first through the sixth principles, if there are questions that individuals or organizations have about principles 7 through 12, would that require like a separate discussion or some kind of a separate engagement with the Center for Nonprofits to address some of these concerns?
Actually, it's not the first 6, like 1 through 6 in a row. It is, it's number 2, it's number 4, it's number 5, it's number 6, it's number 10, and it's number 12. So it's not the first 6.
I got you.
And we'll get into that detail too, but yes, Janita Moody.
Okay, I had to unmute. Thank you. I just wanted to say that when you see the list, it makes you, well, for me personally, I started off feeling like I needed help in one area, and then when you see the principles, it almost makes me feel like I need help with all the principles. And so
That's it's okay.
It's kind of like, wow, I need help in all of this. But and I've been in nonprofit for quite a while. So I mean, it just lets you know you just continue to grow and just even as you evolve, you just still need help. So to piggyback off of Keith's question, if you are a member and you needed what you felt like was more individualized help, what does that look like? Do you guys like meet with someone once a week? Do you schedule a way to help them, or do you send someone out? What exactly is the involvement and the depth of the help that you provide to your members with these principles?
I can speak to that a little bit. We for our members specifically, if they have a question, they want some guided expert advice. We do have our pro bono program. So let's say you have a legal question that comes up, or you have a marketing question, or you need some help looking at something regarding accounting or finance. We have a pool of volunteers, and actually Leslie on the call, she manages that program for members. Members can send a request in within one of those program areas that we offer pro bono support, and you can get linked up with a volunteer to kind of help you and guide you through that. Some of these other topic areas that we don't cover in the Institute, we cover in other ways. So our members can access, for instance, legal compliance and transparency. We have a legal compliance checklist that's free for our members to download, and it goes through all these different, it's a beautiful chart. It helps you to kind of see what things you should be doing as a nonprofit based on what your activities are and how your expenses are and what legally you need to do to remain in good standing as a nonprofit. We provide other resources through our, we have an online resource library that our members can access to get more information about certain topics that we may not cover within this series. And then just really our events calendar. So anyone can access any of our other trainings or programs that we offer around some of these other topic areas, and even some of the ones that we cover within the Institute. If you need extra guidance or instruction on any of those things, we have a pretty robust event calendar that members and non-members can go through and access and get more information about these different areas or things that they may be having trouble on. And then member assistance, if you're not finding what you need on the website and you're really in need of, say, a certain resource or a certain contact, a vendor, you can reach out to us. We'll refer you to our business finder where you can find a consultant. We'll refer you on to someone else who can help, or a resource that we may have that we can sort of find the answer for you, if you will.
That's good to know. I didn't realize that you had so many volunteers and the depth of the accessibility of the program, the organization. So that's real good to know. And I actually attended one of your conferences, feels like it was last October, but that legal compliance checklist that you referenced, I sat down with my auditor and my accountant and went through it thoroughly. So it was very helpful.
Good. I'm glad to hear. That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. So as we kind of transition, we're going to do a deep dive into looking at our current management condition, doing kind of like a little mini assessment of where we are in terms of where we are now, and thinking about how we want to enhance our capacity over the next year. So we're going to look across all 12 for that. And then we're going to do some identifying which practices in the 6 focus that the management functions that we're focusing on for the workshop. For the workshop series, we're going to do a little bit of some assessing and just kind of benchmarking where we are, so that as we go through each of the management functions and the training experience, as we go through each of those, you will have that as a touch point to kind of say, hey, I really need to know a little bit more about whichever practices it is that you identify. So we're going to continue with a little bit more of just kind of foundational thinking about what it is that we want to shore up as it relates to how we manage our nonprofits. And so we're going to go into a break. Team, how much time do we want to give? It's 10:37. So how much time do we want to give for the break? And then we'll come back and do a little bit more work.
I think about a 5-minute break if that works for folks.
All right. So where does that put us? 10:42-ish?
Yeah, come back around 10:42. We'll get rolling at 10:43.
Okay, there you go. All right. So enjoy your break and take a break. Take a break.
Yes.
So we want to continue with operationalizing our framework. And we've been introduced to the 12 principles and introduced to the principles and practices guide. And so as a part of the framework, We try to think about the current management condition of our nonprofit organization going into this training, going into this learning experience. And so there are 3 management conditions that we have created and framed in a way to help us to identify with where we are as a nonprofit, at least in prior to going into the training experience. So in your workbook, that would be great.
Dr. Palmer, you froze a minute, so you may need to repeat that, what page you want them to go to.
Oh, sorry.
Or whatever that last thing is you said.
Okay, if we would go to page 10 in our workbook. And we can also, if it's helpful, I enjoy being in the gallery whenever we're doing our work. But if we need to show the 3 management conditions on a slide, we can do that as well. Is there anyone who it would be helpful to put this on the screen? It is page 10 in your workbook. Are we all good? I think there are a couple people, team, who would like to see it on the screen. Okay. All right. So as we think about how we can understand where we are currently as it relates to our current condition. So our approach is to kind of help all of us get grounded in understanding the current condition of our nonprofit's management capacity. And as I mentioned before, this experience focuses on the management aspect of running a nonprofit organization. And so we have 3, I guess, what you might call states of being or current conditions. We identify build as one of those areas or frames, thrive, and then sustain. When you think about the current condition of your nonprofit and how it's managed, think about it from the perspective of what is the present state of our nonprofit's ability to manage growth and development.
Is it me or Dr. Palmer frozen?
I think she
I think she's frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, she's frozen.
Uh-oh. Let's give her a minute. Maybe she'll sign back in.
Yeah, we may need to ask her to,
Keep her camera off.
yeah, to turn her camera off or, call in to with her phone if we keep having trouble. Thanks for bearing with us.
Yes, bear with me 1 second.
Keeping an eye on our waiting room to see if she.
Check.
is rejoining.
What we could do, Rebecca, while we're waiting on her, I think as everyone's looking over the principles and practices approaches for Build, Thrive, and Sustain that Dr. Palmer was just going through, and you can see it there and in your workbook, we were going to ask you and break you into groups to talk about what do you feel the difference are between each of these frames and the usefulness of these frames in terms of what you're reviewing and where you are currently or where you think you are in your organizations. Are we ready to do that, Rebecca, while we wait for Dr. Palmer? So that way they can be in discussion mode about the management
I'm
conditions?
here. Sorry
Oh.
about that. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Palmer. Well, we didn't know how long you take. So I just was instructing again about what you just went over about the Build, Thrive, Sustain, and that we were going to move into a breakout group for them to discuss within their groups. Each of these and what is the importance and difference between these frames and usefulness of them within their organizations, unless there's something you want to go into first.
I do want to add, I don't know if you were able to mention, but I do want to add in terms of the Build, Thrive, and Sustain, how when we're identifying what condition that we align with, to look at the progression and what that looks like. And so in terms of Build, here, what we're focusing on is the degree to which we are meeting our legal requirements in terms of how we operate. And so those fundamental components of governance and nonprofit management from just kind of the setup of the 501c3. And then in terms of Thrive, notice there's a progression there in terms of how we're demonstrating a working knowledge of governance and oversight and managing a nonprofit, in particular, the 12 principles that you've been introduced to, earlier. And so this demonstration then is evidenced by how we handle our day-to-day operations by a skilled and engaged board of directors and staff. And you might even include here volunteers as well. So notice the progression from Build to Thrive. Build, we've got things in place. We've got the legal requirements. We've met those in terms of how we operate. Something else to note about being at the Build in this identifying with Build is that you may be, a nonprofit where you may not necessarily have your 501c3 status yet, but you have filed with the Secretary of State's office, right? So you've taken that first step, and you might very well be working on that official, submitting to the Internal Revenue for your 501c3 status. And then moving from Thrive to Sustain, again, notice the progression. When we identify with Sustain, what we're saying here is that we are capable, right? We are capable of sustainability, that there is evidence that we can move into sustaining this nonprofit organization. And so it might be recognized as the fact that your nonprofit is an asset to the community and an asset to people in your community that you're serving. It also might be that you have a stable revenue stream, so you have some stability and consistency in where your funding is coming from. It may also be recognized if you have operating reserves. Now, I know for some of our nonprofits, having operating reserves, we're probably doing the Toyota jump if we have operating reserves, because that's pretty challenging to achieve. It also might be evident in the fact that we have some very robust programs and services, and that we have a track record of impact. It may also be evident in very strong governance, and then also partnerships, collaborations, so we see these kinds of things that are taking place. And it's more of this than less of this when we start to see signs of sustainability. So we may, in terms of thinking about which one does your nonprofit align with right now? Do you align overall? Do you align with Build? Do you align with Thrive? Or do you align with Sustain? And so this is important to kind of think about in terms of that. I know that team, we have the two resources mentioned here, but I want to go ahead and go back to gallery and get ready to go into the breakouts. So again, this is our approach and framework for thinking about and taking into consideration the current management condition of the nonprofits we represent here today. And if we could go back to gallery view. Thank you. I'm gonna just pause because on my end, going back to gallery view is a little bit of a delay. So I'm gonna pause here. I think we're back. It's just populating somewhat slow. And can I also check in with our interpreters? Is the pace going okay for the interpreters that are in our series?
It's like we're getting a thumbs up from them.
Okay, thank you. Great. So again, as we go into our breakouts, what we're doing here is we want you to spend some time with your colleagues. This is an opportunity to do two things. One, it's an opportunity for introductions. It's also an opportunity for you to kind of hear the perspective of your colleagues and where they are. And what we want you to discuss is, we want you to discuss the usefulness from your perspective. We want you to answer this question. What is the usefulness of each of these frames or the usefulness of thinking about the current condition of your nonprofit as it relates to Build, Thrive, and Sustain? So we want you to have a discussion around the usefulness or the potential usefulness of beginning to think about, for example, those 12 principles in terms of where you might be as an organization, but focus in on overall as a nonprofit based on where your organization is at the present time. Where do you think you are? Build, Thrive, or Sustain. So you're gonna share that, and then you're gonna talk about the usefulness of being introduced to this framework. And team, I'm gonna let you move folks into breakouts.
So we're gonna pop up some, we used to put folks just randomly into groups, but we're gonna try to do it a little differently and have folks self-select which group they want to join based on their role. So looks like we've got 9 different options here. Hopefully allow participants to choose the room. So we're going to go ahead and let you self-select. We do have, I believe, 2 ED rooms because we we have a big group of you that are executive directors. But just feel free to select a group that you feel like most closely matches your role. We also have a sort of miscellaneous group. If you're not feeling inclined to go with any of those groups, feel free to just go into that one. And we'll keep an eye on the group numbers. If we need to move people around, like for the ED ones, if everybody joins one of them and we need to move people around, just be noting that we were doing that as well. And then if you need interpretation, please just stay in the main room here, and then we'll figure out which group you're going to for today's session so we can get you in the right group with your interpreter. All right. So is everybody seeing those options? And Dr. Palmer, we're going to give how many minutes?
$10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. Okay.
10 minutes. Uh-huh.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Maybe how many years you are in the ED role. So I'm hoping that folks are seeing the options pop up for them to join a breakout room. No, you're not, Cece. I'm seeing you shake your head. We can manually put folks into rooms as well. Danielle, you were asking, is it better for a development manager to go into finance or marketing group?
Rebecca,
Yes.
it may be that it won't pop up, but if you go down where your like little tool icons are, there will be a breakout option. And once you click that, you'll see all the different rooms available.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that helps you all. And if you're having trouble deciding or you can't find it, we can assign you to rooms if need be. Thanks for hanging in there as we figure all this out. We'll get into our groove.
It'll be so helpful though, once you're in your breakout and you're with colleagues that have similar roles.
Yes, for sure.
So it's definitely worth the couple of minutes to make sure that folks are in there. Greater Life doesn't see it. Looks like most everybody is finding their way. Looks like it.
I know some of you are having, like Melvin, you're trying to decide between 2 different groups. Just pick one, whichever one you pick will be fine. Yeah.
We see you, Precious. You can choose one. Yep, there you go.
What's the difference again between 1 and 2? ED 1 and 2?
It's just 2 separate rooms because we have a lot of EDs. So you just pick 1 or 2 and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right, let's get through this list and get folks into their correct rooms.
Yeah, it looks like Precious and Chris stepped away.
Okay.
Oh, no, there they are. Okay.
Oh, there they are.
Sorry.
Feel free to unmute and let us know which one you'd like to go into.
Yeah.
Could Greater Life be put in ED, please?
Sure.
Because we still can't see it.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and assign you to executive directors too.
And Catherine, looks like you're a co-executive director. Is that right? Catherine Ward. Yep.
Sí, pero yo soy hispanohablante.
Oh, okay.
Sí.
Gotcha.
Gracias.
Gotcha.
So for interpreters, I'm going to go ahead and Catherine, I'm going to put you in, are you on this list? I'm going to put you in the first one, Executive Director 1. And then we'll send our interpreters there as well.
It's our role.
Okay, there you go. Right, who else? Got.
Welcome back, everyone. And thank you for kind of working with us to put you in breakout rooms based on your roles. That is a new feature for the experience, is to have the breakout room set up such that you are in a space with individuals who have similar positions in the sector. And so, so thank you for working with us on that. I think it went pretty good, team. So we can be glad about that. So I do want to get just a sense of kind of what your thoughts were. There were 9 breakout rooms, and so I would like to hear from maybe 3 of the breakout rooms. And so I'll just say first come, first serve, unmute yourself and give us some idea of what it was you all discussed in terms of the usefulness of kind of framing where your nonprofit is in terms of management.
I'll go for our group. I was in the executive director group, and I think that what we discussed was this kind of that we were borderline in different buckets, right? It's you look at some of it and you think, okay, I'm doing well in this area, but then you look at the other bucket, you think, well, I'm not doing that great in that area. So we're kind of straddling which bucket to really pick. When you look, we were specifically thrive and sustain.
Thank you.
So
thank you. Thank you for sharing. Is there another group?
I was in the same group, Dr. Palmer, and we had a really great question about, we had a young nonprofit, and they said they're currently in the build section, and how do we move forward to the thrive section? And one thing that we all felt very confident is utilizing your board to the best of their capabilities as well as yours, and really just working smarter, not harder, and letting them take a lot of that weight off of the executive director, so then you can focus on aspects of how your nonprofit can thrive.
Thank you. And I would also encourage us to, and we're going to do a deep dive here in just a minute, to lean in on those practices that align with thrive and sustain across the management functions. And we're going to do a deep dive into that in just a minute. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. Engaging your board and utilizing their skills and expertise is a very important aspect of the person who's in the executive director role, to partner with your board and definitely let them offer up human resources, if you will. Is there a third group? Thank you for sharing.
My name is Keith Miller. I'm with 4C at Carolina Collaborative Community Care, and we had a great group of other executive directors and brought up several points. One of the points that we kind of talked a little bit about was maybe some effort to assign some type of numerical metric to these categories, just as a tool to kind of help to better understand where your organization is when you look at some of the metrics. From my own perspective, coming from the for-profit world and working with an organization that was for-profit, but it also was a publicly traded corporation. One of the things that I learned was that they had these metrics that they had to meet. And, you know, for better or for worse, those metrics kind of help to understand how you were performing against some kind of a standard, and also allowed you to be able to say, hey, listen, we got to do this or do that, or to kind of help us meet the metric, or we were meeting the metric. So that was just a thought. And I think the other piece was trying to look at organizations that they may have at one level of the organization may be able to say it might be at a thrive or sustain, but then you have components of that organization that may be in the build or between build and thrive, and that it's a complicated view when you look at it. Areas that need improvement. Overall, you may be okay, but with these areas that require this work, if you don't improve on these areas, that could cause the organization to suffer more intermediate and long term.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Agreed. What I will say is that there are, in the literature, there are probably about a half a dozen, so that's 6 assessment tools that are out there related to nonprofit organizations. There is one called the OCAT, Organizational Capacity Assessment Tool, Keith. And it does have a numeric feature to that capacity assessment tool. It's called the OCAT, OCAT. It's a freebie. So if you Google it, it's available for you. Is there, since we heard from all executive directors, is there another role, a group that would like to share your perspective?
I'll chime in. Go ahead, Heather. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. All right. So I was in the programs, and we were kind of all in the same space. So we're all in the Thrive and Sustain, where our organizations are. We've all been, or the organizations have been up and running for quite a significant period of time. And, we kind of all agreed that while all of the principles, you're constantly working on building and thriving and sustaining really throughout your entirety of the organization, but really thriving and sustaining that organization by building your community and working with the community, and then sustaining your organization within the community it's all very important. So it's hard to kind of break that down.
Thank you. Here's a way of thinking about utilizing this to help do an analysis. Each organization obviously is different. Each organization has been in existence for a different amount of time. Each organization has a different purpose, has a different mission. And whether or not you are serving people, or whether or not you are working to be helpful to animals or the environment, or, just depends on your organization. It has a lot to do with how you process and how you do your analysis. Each and every organization is different. So I deputize you to take the tool and use the tool to help to tell the story of where your organization is based on how your organization is set up, where it is in its life cycle, and how it goes about doing its work side of the organization through programs and services, but also internally. I know that was a mouthful, that was a whole lot, but it is okay to take this tool and tweak it and make it work such that your analysis is customized to your organization. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, great. I see some head nods. So thank you for letting me know that. That's just a very important part, really, of any tool that you use. One, understand it, determine to what degree it can be useful, and use it in that way. I think is an important point to make, as we're going to continue to use this over the next hour. We're going to continue to try to engage you in a way that operationalizes the tool for you. So in terms of just say building on this understanding of the three frames. So we want to do two things. The first thing we want to do is we want to use these frames to determine our current management condition on a very basic level across the 12 principles. That's number one. And then we're going to use the tool, and we're going to provide you a SurveyMonkey link and all of that. We're going to do that and do it in real time. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to focus on the 6 management functions that we're going to be, in which we're going to be doing our work over the series, so over the next 5 weeks. And so, we're gonna build on understanding the usefulness of the framework again, on a very kind of fundamental, foundational level. Then we're going to use it to do some assessing across the 12 principles. And then we're going to do a deeper dive with the frame, identifying where we are in terms of practices. So again, we're going to go back now to just looking at a kind of a basic level of assessment. So here is, if you go to your workbook, and I want you to, we're going to be working with page 11 through 14. And you have a worksheet on page 15. Okay. You're going to record your responses using the worksheet on page 15. So again, we're building on, okay, the way in which we think about management is build, thrive, or sustain. Now we're going to look at build, thrive, and sustain, or assess where we are based on all 12 principles. There's a comment in the chat. I'm not sure if we, team, I think I saw 1 or 2 things pop up, so I don't want to miss that.
Yeah, folks were just sharing about how they might use this tool with other staff and board and things like that. So there's just some commentary going back and forth and people sharing that idea. But
okay,
yep,
awesome. And you can use this tool using a 360-degree approach. You know, you can have staff do it, and you can have board do it, and you can have key stakeholders, you know, you can get feedback in a lot of different ways. But again, so we're going to use the worksheet on page 15, and we're going to assess our current management condition across all 12 of the principles. Okay. So if you go back to page 11, you'll see that page 11 has principles 1 through 3. If you go to page 12, it has principles 4 through 6. If you go to page 13, it has principles 7 through 9. And if you go to page 14, it has principles 10 through 12. And so there's a request to show the workbook pages on the screen. I think we can do that. I'll pause until we get that on the screen. So again, as we're doing that, we're building, right? We're building. We have learned the frames, build, thrive, sustain. And now we're going to utilize the frames across each of the 12 principles. And so what you're going to do on your worksheet is you are going to mark where your organization is for each of the principles. Is your organization at build, or is it at thrive, or is it at sustain? So you're going to self-select which one, where you think your organization is in terms of the framework. So I'm going to pause here And we're gonna give you the opportunity to complete each of these. I'm not sure how many folks team needed this on the screen, but I guess we maybe just need to kind of time it to switch to the next page. So again, you're using your worksheet on page 15, and you're gonna note where your organization, where you think your organization, what you think the current management condition is for your organization across all 12 principles. And I do think for the participants, we did put the link in the chat for you to access it that way. We want to make sure you get it. And thank you, team, for rotating that up to the next page. Thank you. So hopefully everyone has access to the information, because again, we're going to build on this. So we want to make sure that everybody is with us. I want to make sure you're caught up, that you're with us in this process. And if you have questions as you're moving along, just unmute yourself and pose your question. Because we're gonna make sure everybody gets through this together.
So may I ask this, for step information and technology, do you have a best way that you store technology for a nonprofit? Like for me, I'm just now building everything. I use Google Sheets for everything. And I just kind of name it off, I'm working with this organization. Do you have anything that you think is best that we should be using, like a good website or a good way for us to track our our information and things of that nature?
Team, is there a particular recommendation that we make to organizations that inquire about how to store and keep their information? I know from a financial standpoint, a lot of nonprofits that we work with try to utilize their Microsoft resources and their Google resources, because it is not it's cost effective for them to be able to do that. And so Excel, like you said, the Google resources, a lot of folks are using the share drive, the platform, because it doesn't have this extra cost to it. Rebecca, I saw you unmute yourself, so I'll let you chime in on what you think.
No, I think that's spot on. I think part of it is, what information are you tracking? What's the level of security you need for some of that information, right? If we're talking about client information or, contact information, that sort of thing. And then what do you want to do with that information? So for some things, for the information and what you want to do, how you want to manipulate it or how you want to track it, a spreadsheet is perfectly okay. It's a very reasonable way for lots of organizations to do that. Just make sure you have a backup system, right? So you don't lose everything. And folks in your organization understand sort of how to update it and manipulate it and that sort of thing. And then as you get more advanced, you can try out other systems. And folks, feel free. This is what the chat is for. If you are one of those organizations who started off using spreadsheets and found them, as you got more sophisticated and you had more information to track, you found them a little clunky, or you wanted to have more dynamic tools, feel free to pop in here what you're using, what you found is really helpful when it comes to tracking things and keeping tabs on all of your information. Does that help, Malik? It's a good question.
Yes, ma'am. It helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good.
Okay, I think we're on the last three of the principles on the screen here for you to identify where your organization is as it relates to capacity. So where are we as it relates to our current management condition so that we can then begin to think about how we want to enhance our capacity? Salesforce, Malik, is noted in the chat as a resource to possibly use. And also, TechSoup is a resource that offers quite a bit of digital kind of platform type resources at low cost. So that's something else you might want to do. And Malik, there are some other comments in the chat too of folks kind of giving you some feedback as to what might be helpful. Okay, team, if we could go back to gallery view now. So let's talk about kind of where you landed with looking at your capacity across the 12 principles. Again, if I could just share our approach and our framework as it relates to looking at capacity and your current management condition is to set the stage for how you are going to enhance your capacity and what you're going to focus on to enhance your capacity. We could have started this off with going right into the first management function and starting to train and educate on that management function. But our approach is to think about and consider where your organization is currently, and then begin to think about how you might want to go about enhancing capacity. And so that's why we ask on a very basic level across those 12 principles. Notice that each frame is different based on the management function. So it's not this cookie cutter kind of you select build, you select thrive or sustain, and the build, thrive, and sustain is the same option. It is a very different customized option to think about as it relates to the management function. And so it's more specific than general. Now, you could very well add some nuggets if you choose to, as it relates to your own individual organization. So I do want to get a sense of where you landed with this in terms of the selections that you made as it relates to your organization. Rebecca, are we going to use the poll or the chat for this? Which one do you? Okay. All right. So, and what we want to do is just ask you to indicate for us how many builds you have versus how many thrives versus how many sustains. So you had 12 management functions. And so go ahead and make that selection as you see the poll on your screen. And you have to scroll down to see what's under number 3, right? How many sustains. So you have to use the little gray bar to the right to scroll down on the poll so that you can see what's there. So if you would kind of select that, and so we can just get an idea of how many bills we had versus how many thrives versus how many sustains in terms of the current condition of your organization. Where are you currently?
We have about approaching 60% participated. We'll give it a little bit more time. I like to get up to at least 75 or 80% participated.
Okay.
Give folks a little bit more time. Good.
Thank you. Because ultimately, once we have a sense of, or once we determine where we are, then it's time to build a plan to either enhance or maintain where we are.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close our poll and share the
Okay.
results.
Thank you.
All right. I
All
see
right.
there, Greg. Yeah. You said we had 0 in the build area, but that was not an option to select. Sorry about that. We didn't give you a
Oh,
0
sorry.
option. You'll have to change our poll. That's a really good point.
Mhm.
So you all should be able to see the results here.
So we have 54% that are building, that are at build across the 12. And we have 45%, the most that are at Thrive, and we have. So what this does is this helps us to begin to think about in general, because we've not honed in on each one. We could very well take a look at each of the principles and, drill it down to that. But this gives us a really good sense of, in terms of the people that did the poll, just kind of where we are. And of course, we want to move into sustain. We're at when you look at sustain, majority are at about 1 to 3. Folks had 1 to 3 in the sustain, or you could just say half. You added the 45% and the 36%. So thank you for that. So that helps us to kind of know just where we are. Again, what you want to keep in mind about looking at our current management condition on this level is that each of those individual build, thrive, sustains are customized to align with that particular management function. And so the question then becomes, where do we want to continue to maintain where we are? And then what aspects of managing our nonprofit do we want to enhance? What do we want to focus on? What do we want to work on? And then beginning to do that. So we want to go, we're going to take a deeper dive here as it relates to looking at current management condition and looking at this across specifically the 6 areas that we're focusing on in this institute. So team, if we could go to slide 18, that would be great. Thank you. Okay. So, and thank you all for your comments in the chat. I'm trying to keep up with those as well, just kind of paying attention to what it is that you're sharing. So for the Nonprofit Management Institute, these are the management functions, i.e. principles, that we're going to focus on over the next 5 weeks. And again, we are looking at our current degree and level of capacity. I do want to point out, and team, if we could put this in the chat, I didn't do this earlier. There are 2 resources that I want to make you aware of that may be helpful to you if you haven't already, you're not already familiar with these. They're 2 books. Both of them are available on Amazon. One is titled The 5 Life Stages of Nonprofit Organizations, and the other is titled Nonprofit Management. Principles for Practice. And so it's by Michael Worth, that book is. Those are 2 resources that I reference quite a bit as I'm working with individual nonprofit organizations. And we've put those links in the chat for you. But as you're thinking about capacity and assessing your capacity, keep in mind that there are some other fundamental management functions to consider. That would be the nonprofit management resource that I just shared. And then also keep in mind that your nonprofit is at a particular life stage. And that's what the 5 Life Stages is Nonprofit Organizations book references. So those are 2 resources to give you a little bit more depth in terms of contextualizing assessing your capacity. So just kind of keep those in mind. I wanted to share those with you. Capacity assessment. We are going to assess our capacity across these 6 management functions, i.e. our principles. And what we want to do is we want to look at each one of these, and we're going to determine what we want to work on in the next year, okay? So we're going to look at each of these: board governance, financial management, fundraising, human resources, program design, management and evaluation, and strategic planning. Those are the 6 that we're going to focus on for this institute. And we're going to walk through a process of assessing our capacity as it relates to each of these management functions, utilizing the Build, Thrive, and Sustain frame. And we're going to identify which of the practices we would like to work on in the next year. So if you look at board governance has 26 practices. Financial management has 21 practices. Fundraising has 20. Human resources has 23. Program design, management, and evaluation has 16. And strategic planning has 19. So turn in your workbook to page 17. Turning the workbook to page 16 is the start of this section. So let me tell you what the whole section involves. If you look at pages 16 through 29, each page represents a principle or management function, a set of management conditions using Build, Thrive, and Sustain, and a set of practices that align with each of the management conditions. I'm going to say that again. Each principle is represented on a page, starting with page 16. Each principle is represented on a page with a set of options for management condition utilizing the Build, Thrive, and Sustain frames. And each of those frames have a set of practices. We are going to focus on board governance, which is on page 17 and 18. And this is what we have on the screen here as well. Page 20 and 21 has financial management. Page 22 has fundraising. Page 23 is human resources. Page 27 is program design, management, and evaluation. And page 29 is strategic planning. And so we are going to identify, we're going to select for the rest of our time, or most of our time left here today, we are going to select which of the practices that we want to work on in the next year. Team, you can go to the next slide. So here's an example of what that looks like. We just pulled out fundraising. So fundraising has a set of practices under Build. It has a set of practices under Thrive. It has a set of practices under Sustain. And it is actually on page 22 of your workbook. This slide is represented on page 22 of your workbook. And so you're going to identify which of the practices, going to select which practice you want to work on in the next year, within the next year. Are we all good? Before we go to the next step, everybody good? If we could go back to the gallery view, team, that would be great. I just want to check in just to make sure we're all together. Just want to make sure. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do for each of the principles, again, management functions that align with these management functions, we're going to send you a link. We're going to send you a link. I do believe we're going to put that link in the chat. You're going to click on that link, and when you open that link, you will be in the you'll be able to complete the assessment in terms of the practices you want to work on in the next year. So I want to make sure. There's a question that I want to address that's in the chat. And it's, here's the question. Let's see, when we can say that all practices under Build are checked. Let's go back up. When we can say that all practices under Build are checked off, the organization is in the Thrive frame. It's starting to show that, or you're moving into Thrive, yes. But you actually may see some of what we have described there in Build, but you may also see some of what we have there in Thrive happening in tandem. So those things may be happening simultaneously. But what's more important is for us to be able to identify what it is that we want to work on, or where there's a gap, or where there's something we need to shore up. So that is a way of interpreting it. So I didn't want to miss that. I didn't want to miss responding to that question. All right, so let's get ready. You should have the link. You you should, and I'm going to repeat the instructions. I think I saw a question pop up about the instructions. So I'm just going to repeat the instructions for all of us. So you're going to go into, the survey, you're going to go into, click on the link, and then you are self-selecting the practices that you want to work on in the next year. That's what you're identifying, because what we want is we want to plan for building capacity. We want to plan for building capacity. And so you're going to identify which of those practices you want to work on in the next year.
Can I ask a
Is everybody good?
clarifying question? It seems like all of these things are ideally things that we are doing. Some of them hopefully are already going well. So maybe we're selecting, I just want to clarify, we're selecting the ones that are of most importance, need the most attention or change or shift. And is there a goal through all of the different principles of how many, is reasonable to focus on at one time?
The latter part of your question is no. There's no magic recipe. I wish, oh my gosh, Jesslyn, if there was a magic recipe, I could sell it. No, just kidding. But yeah.
Because it can be a everything at
Yeah.
once situation, but
Yeah.
trying to prioritize what's most important.
Agreed. And here's where the comment I made earlier about analysis. We all are going to take this information once we have identified what we're going to work on. We are going to analyze this differently, depending upon who we are, what our skill set is, how we understand what we do. There are a lot of factors that contribute to that, which is why it's difficult to land a recipe. Because I can go into ABC organization and the executive director has been in that role for 20 years, and they're very familiar with how all of these pieces work. Or I can go into a DEF organization, and there is a person who's been there 2 days, and they have never worked in a nonprofit organization before. And so it is truly the context in which we determine what to do next is very important. It's very important because it's not going to be the same for everyone. And having a recipe that is to match up with organizations that are shifting and changing every day, every second is just hard to kind of land on. So what we do here is say, okay, let's look at what it is that you would like to focus on in the next year. And by the time you finish your training in the series, you are more knowledgeable at that point to begin to identify what comes first, what comes second, and how to prioritize. Does that make sense?
Dr. Palmer, I've got a question about the survey.
Sure. But real quick, before I go into that question, I want to make sure everyone is in the survey and that everyone is beginning to make your selections, because I don't want my answering questions to disturb you and being able to complete the task. So, and then I'll come back to the person who was asking the question about the survey.
The survey will allow you to skip entire sections. If you're not in the build for that particular principle, you can just skip to the next one. It'll give you an option to just kind of move ahead. And then for both of you at Greater Life, you'll need to both have your own separate links, if you will. And that will be actually illuminating for each of you to fill it out and say you can compare and contrast where you think you need to, what you think you need to work on once you get your results back. Great. Sounds like everybody's got the link and they're able to access it.
Great. And we are here with you. So if you have questions, you can, we're paying attention to the chat and we are paying attention if you have your hand raised. Question. Hoping that we're about halfway through. So that we've completed 3 or we're on number 3, moving into number 4 or beyond. And again, if you have questions or if there's a comment or thought while you're going through this process, please let us know.
Dr. Palmer, I was going to ask, so since we're only going to focus on one of these component areas for the major project, other areas, then would we just simply skip those?
So if I'm understanding you, so what you're doing is you are identifying the ones that you want to work on in the next year for the purpose of this series, because we're going to be
Yes.
referring back to this. When you get your feedback, we're going to use that to then move forward into the material. And so if I'm understanding your question, for the purpose of this series, that's what we're doing. But that doesn't mean that you can't, utilize this in a different way. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, and I'll go back now because there might be some other things within specific areas that I may want to focus on or develop. Okay, that gives me some clarity with that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Hopefully, we're moving into number 5. If not, haven't already completed all 6. So hopefully we're getting close to the end.
I have a logistical question about the survey that I just realized. Do you have to click OK in order for it to record your responses, or if you just hit next, are your responses recorded? Because I haven't been clicking OK.
I think if you just click next, it'll take you to the next screen and it'll save your responses.
Okay, so if I
Yeah.
didn't click OK for each one, they'll still be recorded.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's my memory of it. Is that what others are finding? Is that if you just click onto the next, it's been a while since I looked at the participant version of that one.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you would, show me a thumbs up in your reaction if you're at number 6 or complete. If you're at number 6 or complete. Great. Okay, looks like we're getting there. It's 12:11. And so, thank you. I think we have, yeah, I think we're moving right along. Great. I see more thumbs up. Okay, great. Awesome. So
I'll just say real quick, if you aren't done, leave it open, don't close it and finish it, you know, later towards the end of this session, if you want to keep working on it, but make sure that you don't close it because I'm not sure if it'll let you go back to where you started from, if that makes sense. Thank you.
great. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca, for that. So here we are, having been introduced to the 6 principles, or the 6 management functions that align with 6 of our principles, to kind of present to you what these topics are, and to also to have you to kind of move into this experience with some thought around, well, what practices is it that I want to work on in the next year for my organization? And at the same time, how, some thought around how to go about doing that and learning that through the experience. So we want it to be a real, an experience that's real and aligns with what it is that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. I will caution us to try not to get overwhelmed with what seems to be a high volume of practices to get to shore up. But to really kind of take it in as a way to understand what these management concepts are and what they might look like when they're operationalized. And then to also have a checkpoint as to say, this is where we are. This is what this information tells me about where we are. But also here are some additional practices that we can put into play to help our organization grow and develop. And notice that we use the terminology, help us grow and develop, because these organizations are evolving like in every nanosecond. We are evolving, our organizations are evolving, they're changing. Something happens that's different in our external environment to the organization, and we've got to make a change. Something happens internally to the organization, we got to make a change. And so for those of us who are in the executive director role or the CEO role, we may have a little bit more influence, right? And we are more of the decision-making around what it is that we do or that we don't do. And so while all the other positions that are present in this space are supporting that. And so it is important for the supporting cast to be able to understand what it is your executive director or your board, what is it that they're focusing on and working on all the time. And these things are happening in some cases, without us directly planning for things to happen the way that they are. Janita?
Yes, I was just wondering with that survey that we just took, I know you said you're going to use it kind of like a guideline to discuss some of the topics or areas that we check. But will we also get an email of our own personal answers, almost like what we wanted to work on as a reminder?
Yes, Rebecca, you want to chime in? Yes, you will.
Okay.
Yeah. Our goal is to email those off to you individually by the end of the week. And then we compile responses from all of you and highlight some of the practices, practices that were most selected or the highest ranked for people that they want to work on, because that'll help guide us in the future sessions on what we want to make sure we touch on for all of you as you're working on those items.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
I'll just say one more thing. We have in our wraparound email, there will be a link to the survey for those, if there are some folks who weren't able to join today's session or had to leave a little early, we will provide that link and a reminder in that wraparound email to complete it as soon as you can. So no worries on that for both you and Karen.
All right. Well, that concludes our official work for today. And I am going to turn it over to Rebecca. No, sorry, Lisa. Sorry. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to kind of move us into the closeout. But before I do that, I do just want to pose just a quick question, which is, how are you feeling about your understanding of the framework and the practices you want to work on? You can use the chat, or you can unmute yourself. How are you kind of feeling about this framework, this, assessing your capacity, the fact that we got these 12 principles, we're going to work on 6 of them. Where are you in your thought process in digesting what we've covered so far? I'm seeing ready to dive in. I'm excited about being able to make improvements. I like the structured approach. Seeing the practices was really helpful, eye-opening, excited. Let's dive in. I appreciate this framework so much. I've struggled, excited, but overwhelmed. Okay. Great start, thought-provoking. Well, our topic, and Lisa is going to get into this here in a second. Our topic next week is board governance. Yeehaw. Lots of fun, right?
Talk about a lot of information.
Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure, great. So not to hold you up between me and lunch, it's getting on 12:30. As Dr. Palmer said, let me go back to some of these comments. I think you're in the right place and you're where you should be. I think especially those that are saying that they're overwhelmed, we expect it to be. It's a lot of information and you'll have to sit and go back through it again. Those of us who are even seasoned through this thing, I think it's still helpful to see how this pans out and just gauge yourself. So next week, like Dr. Palmer mentioned, but let me first say, you're going to have an evaluation coming up, Link. Please make sure you take time, give us feedback, honest feedback. Any feedback is helpful and all feedback is welcome. Upcoming sessions will be board governance. It'll be up here in a second. You see the dates: program design, strategic planning, fundraising, human. Now, board human resources. Board governance will have just as jam-packed information. Now, that one session, we usually have a lot of questions, a lot of discussions. So Dr. Palmer will try to move us through that as quickly as possible, but yet we do understand that there will be a lot of questions for that one, just to tell you up front. Again, the link should be in the chat for the evaluation. Go to the next slide, please. Want to have a couple of upcoming things. We have our conference for those of you that are familiar or not familiar. Every year, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits has our annual conference. Here are the dates that you can see here. It's in the Research Triangle Park this year. So we hope our early bird registration ends soon. So really hope that you guys, those that are interested, will come and we get to see you there. And if we do see you there, come up to us, say hello. And one final note, we have started with Dr. Palmer a masterclass for the Nonprofit Management Institute. We're coming up on our first one that we'll have in November. And these are only for graduates of the Institute. We're not putting this out to all of our members. We just want to do this especially for our Institute graduates. Now this is our 9th series, you figure with 50 to 60 people, it's a lot of people. So seats are limited. We have about 25 seats available. And again, during this time, it's going to be a conversation, not a classroom style learning session per se, but you'll be there with your other graduates, and it's going to be more specialized, strategic, and practical conversations about things we've learned, things we want to apply to your nonprofit management organizations. And so if you're interested, please sign up. We'd love to see you, and it's going to be in person. So that's what we're really excited about. And we're going to be doing that here in Raleigh in our main office at the center. And I think
Lisa,
that's
someone just
sure.
asked about the cost. Someone just asked about the cost for the masterclass in the chat.
Oh, I thought that was up there. I am sorry. We will.
I think it's 85 for members. Yeah.
Yes, and
Thank you,
yeah.
Leslie. 85 for
Thank you,
members,
Leslie.
110 for non-members.
Yeah, that should have been up there. Good catch, though. Thank you. Caught me off guard on it. Who asked that question? Kimberly did.
I did. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize. I was just, I'm always budget conscious. When I see
Keith,
stuff,
you're right on, Keith. It's good. It's Alejandro said it's free. All right. And if anyone we'll be on for a few minutes after everyone signs off, usually debrief. But if anyone has any specific questions they'd like to ask Dr. Palmer, feel free to stay on for a few to ask. Is that okay with you, Dr. Palmer? I didn't ask you ahead of time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Great. And we'll see you all next week. Have a good lunch.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be sending out a wraparound email with the recording and the slides.
thanks for everything. It was really, really great today. Great session. Great teaching.
Good.
Dr. Palmer, great work.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you.
See y'all soon.
Bye.